Thanks everyone for joining. As I said, it's fantastic to see so many people on this call. I think from what I can see, we've got a mixture of athletes and coaches and some administrators, which is exactly what we're hoping for. For those that I haven't met yet, my name's Nicole. I'm the CEO here at Table Tennis Australia. Don't worry, you won't be hearing from me all night. I will be handing it over to much more exciting people to talk, but I just wanted to welcome everybody to start with, give you a little bit of an overview, and then I'll pass it over to Rob and the high performance team to get cracking. So I guess a little bit of background about why we wanted to have tonight's session. As you might remember, some of you might know, about a year and a half ago, I asked the Sports Commission to do a review into our Olympic program. And in that 18 months, we've come a long way. There was over 22 recommendations that came back from the Sports Commission about things we needed to change. The team, in terms of Rob, Ricardo, Simon and Melissa, have now been in place for just over a year, which I'm sure for them feels like a lot longer than a year. So there's been a lot that's been happening over the last 18 months. And one of the things we said we wanted to improve was our communication with our squads, but also with our broader community as well. So this was an open invitation for the community to attend. One of the things I guess I wanted to point out to you, and it's a bit of an education process, is if you haven't been involved with the Australian Sports Commission and the Australian Institute of Sport before, it's probably important to understand how their funding model works. So our Olympic program is 100% funded by the government. It is our major source of revenue. That's a split of the Australian Sports Commission and also ComGames Australia and some other government or other grant funding in there. But the majority of our program is grant funded. And grant funding is done by the government based on your likelihood to get a medal at an Olympic Games. So if you think of all the sports, there's over 35, it might be even up to 40 NSOs now, national sporting organisations within the system. We all compete against each other for funding, and we compete against all the other sports that are getting medals. So we are one of the lower levels of funding sport. In fact, we're right down the bottom. I think we're in the bottom 3 of sports that get funded by the Sports Commission. Our funding is only ever for 18 months at a time. So our current cycle of funding finishes at the end of June, and we don't find out until May what funding we get for the next 18 months. So it's a pretty precarious sort of position to live in. We do know that it's likely we'll get a little bit of a drop in funding at July 1 of this year, and then probably a second drop of funding in January of next year. And there's a few reasons for that. One, as I said, our medal projections for LA compared to other sports, there are other sports that are higher than us, and there's new sports coming in like lacrosse and cricket and some others that have come in for LA who haven't, and softball I think is in that mix as well, and they're all likely to medal, which means they automatically jump ahead of us in that sort of ladder of funding. And there's also some funding buckets that are not extending into the next financial year. So funding is tight, which means we need to be really careful about how we spend it, and the Sports Commission want us spending it on the top of the pyramid. So when you think of categorised athletes, the highest athletes, and then we go down through our pathway, the funding we get is pretty much tied to the top of that pyramid, the top of the athletes. That's where we're dictated to from the Sports Commission where we must spend our funding, which kind of means that we can't be everything to everyone. But it also means that we need to work really closely with all of you, with our state and territory associations, with our clubs, with our coaches, to make sure that we're continuing to build those pathways and we're continuing to have talent come through them. Because if we're just looking up after the top end of the pyramid, it's vitally important that we're still working with all of you to try and make sure that we've got athletes being identified and developed to move through that pathway. So today you're going to hear a little bit from the team around what we're currently doing, how we see the pathway working, how we can work together to really strengthen that pathway. We'd like to try and take questions towards the end of the session to make sure that Rob and the team can get through as much information as possible, but then we're very open to any questions that you might have. So please, if questions are coming up while we're talking, make sure you write them down so that you can ask them at the end of the session, or put them into the chat, and we'll address them at the end as well. All right, enough from me. I will hand over to Rob Gom, the GM of the Olympic program, to pick it up and take it from there. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Nicole, and hello, everyone. Good to see some of you, at least have many of you in the room. It's brilliant to have this many people come and want to find out a little bit more about the TTA Olympic program. I'd just like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which I'm hosting this meeting tonight, the Wurundjeri, Woiwurrung, and Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and also extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait peoples who are joining us on the call today. As Nicole has said, we're here today to talk all things TTA Olympic program, and hopefully the screen has come up so you can see the slides which are going to be there. We've got a pretty packed agenda, but again, as Nicole said, it's not just going to be me talking. I've got my team on board as well who are going to be taking you through parts of the program which are relevant specifically to them. And as Nicole mentioned, we're very open to questions, and if we don't get through everything tonight, then we're going to be very open for ongoing conversations with anyone in the group in the room, which is what we're all about. So thanks for coming. To give you a brief idea of what today's agenda is all about, we're going to take you through an overview of the whole program and how it sits. Go a little more detail than what Nicole's introduction had. We'll take you through the specifics of the athlete program we've got on offer at the moment, a little about the TTA's selection policies, and then we'll finish with a few key messages. It could be quite content heavy. There's a lot of information in this, but we just wanted to make sure that you have all the information that we have so that you understand what it is that we're working towards and how we can work together, really importantly. So an overview of the program. You can see here at the top, our goals are to get from garage to gold. So as Nicole mentioned, a lot of the funding from the Sports Commission in its entirety comes from getting podium results at our benchmark events, be that Olympics or World Championships. So we've got a really strong aim of getting from the garage, so where everyone can pick up a bat and play table tennis in their garage, to that podium level. It's a pretty ambitious and challenging goal that we've got, but it's what we need to be doing as the custodians of table tennis in Australia. So to get there, we've got daily and global training environments. It's really important to understand how our training programs work, and we want to get a world-class performance out of our world-class team. Beyond that training environment, which we'll go into, we have events. We don't do that just ourselves, but we start with our domestic events, so the TTA Tours, the National Championships. You may have seen the TTA National Invitational, which was an event for the top 12 athletes, male and female, for the first time in January. So it all starts domestically in Australia before we then go into the international pathway. So through our continental cups and challenges, championships, which we've got through ITTF Oceania, into the ITTF World Cups and World Championships, and then right the way throughout, a really great opportunity that we've got to engage with WTT, a pretty amazing suite of tournaments available to athletes of all ages across the world. And this is how we want to make the most of the domestic, international, but also importantly, those training environments to get that world-class performance, world-class team, at the end of the day, striving for that podium success. We've got LA firmly in our sights, which is only 2 years away, but then a really exciting opportunity with Brisbane 32 in just 6 years' time, which I'm sure will absolutely fly by. So having a home games is an incredible opportunity, and that's what we want to be doing to make sure that we get the best results there for the best interest in the sport. So how to get there for 2026? These are what our priorities are, what we're focusing on. So as mentioned, we're developing a world-class Olympic system, which includes athlete-centric approach and a robust global and domestic training environment. Now, remember that global and domestic, because we're going to go into a bit of detail around what that actually looks like. Secondly, we want to develop a sustainable and nationally aligned Olympic pathway, supporting our athletes enter and progress over time. We want to increase our output or our results at the benchmark events, so the key events we've got throughout the year, through a combination of coach support, performance planning, competition readiness, and performance targets. Through conversations like this, we want to increase transparency, communication, and trust throughout the TTA Olympic community. And we internally want to make sure we're operating as a world-class team, because we can't be expecting to have world-class performances unless we're operating to the highest standards as well. So there's a lot which we're trying to aim there, and we're going to go into more detail around that, what that looks like in practice. But to give you an idea of who we are, you may know some of these faces, some might be new. I'm Rob, General Manager, sitting with a team underneath me. So my role and responsibilities around that strategy leadership piece, stakeholder management, the administration of the overall program. But I'm so happy to be supported in this role by three absolutely incredible people who are true experts in the field of table tennis, all joining on the call today. We'll be chatting with us in a little bit. Performance and Pathways lead Simon Gerarda. He's got a responsibility of designing our performance environments domestically and internationally, redesigning our talent ID programs, but also coaching at competitions and camps, a pretty fundamental part of what he's doing. Ricardo Oliveira, our head coach, delivering the senior program in particular. He focuses on the categorized athletes, which we'll go into, delivering daily training environments. He's just home from training today, so it's good that he's managed to get the laptop up. Good to see you, Ricardo. Coaches at competitions, the athlete planning, and working with our top athletes. And then reporting into him, true legend of the sport in Australia, Melissa Tapper, who's with us on an AIS funded Gen 32 scholarship program. She's very much an assistant coach to Ricardo, so responsible for running training sessions, camps, providing her knowledge and transitioning really from being that athlete to the coach and understanding what it means to be an athlete, and then how we can interpret that and how we want to work better with them from our coaching perspective to support the athletes in their development. So it's an incredible team who give an awful lot to it, and I couldn't be prouder to work with them. So thanks to the three of them for joining, and you'll be hearing more from them soon. Onto the performance pathway. So this is where we get into a little bit of what we're trying to do with athletes, how they move up the pyramid. So I've got some definitions here, and I'll take you through what it all looks like, and we'll start at the bottom. So the bottom is the base level participations. This is just state and club programs. This is how you get into table tennis in the first place. This isn't necessarily something we have a lot of oversight of, but it certainly is where the pathway begins for an athlete, where they first pick up a bat to play. When they come into the Olympic program, it's typically through either a Hopes program or a Pathways program, where they participate in our events, the TTA National Hopes Tour and Pathways, and they get their first opportunity to show off their skills to the coaches, work with the coaches, and build up a bit of a network across the country, and through domestic competitions as well. From there in our pathway, they can jump up into a Hopes squad. So this is specifically for identified under 12 athletes who we find through this the National Hopes Tour. From there, you can step up into the pre-emerging squad. Now, pre-emerging is a reference to categorization, which we'll talk about soon. But this is it's more of a transitional squad. So Hopes graduates, so people who maybe have stepped up from the under 12 age group to go into 13, 14, but haven't quite made a national squad yet. But also athletes who might go from 15s to 19s or 19s to senior. We don't want to lose them, but they might not be ready to take that step because there is a big age gap, and squads are difficult to get into. So there's the pre-emerging squad, which you can get into as the transitional phase. From there, we have the national teams and squads. So this is when you're selected into the senior, under 19 or under 15 team or squad. To get into the team, you're selected through a national selection panel to represent Australia at major events. Into the squad, there are a number of ways, but typically it's the top 4 nationally ranked eligible athletes will be put into a squad straight away, with up to 4 more additional selected by the selection panel. And finally, at the top, we've got our pinnacle, which is categorization, and that is athletes who meet the criteria set out on the publicly available TTA National Athlete Categorization Performance Matrix and Guidelines, which we'll again go into a little bit more detail of what that looks like. But just to be clear on this, the top part is national squads, and the key point of difference here is that these people will be selected into squads and teams, and they will be signing athlete agreements. So there'll be a contract in place between Table Tennis Australia and the athletes. The 2 other squads, Pre-Emerging and Hopes, is more of a talent ID squad, and that's something which is got into through the coach's eye. So it doesn't go through the rigor of a selection panel, but it is more to keep our finger on the pulse of the talent which we've got in the country, and how we can see that progressing into those national squads, those more formal squads in time. So importantly, you'd be interested to know, how do you get into these areas? So again, starting at the bottom, this entry-level piece into the state and club programs, that's how you start playing table tennis. So there's multiple ways to get into that. But for the Hopes squad and the tour, the Hopes tour, that's an opt-in program, so people can sign up to camps to get into that for the first time. And then getting into the Hopes squad is your performance. So the coaches will be looking at you throughout the Hopes tour. There is a challenge event at the end of each of these competitions, or at the end of these camps. So it's a competition for the athletes to play against each other, and those that perform the best will be getting into that Hopes squad. When you get into the more formal squads, so the national teams and squads, that's done based on performance, which would see through your international and domestic results. So international competitions and what you do in your Australian ones, as well as the rankings that emerge over time, both national and international there. There are state and private programs which people can transition across from. There's talent identification, so we might understand that there's an athlete who we haven't seen before who's maybe come in from somewhere else, and we give them a chance to go through this program as well. And there's also migration, which is when we would have someone from overseas come into our pathway with the intention of them looking to represent Australia at the highest level as well. And then at the top, the categorized framework, those athletes who hit certain criteria, which we'll take you through shortly. Now, anyone on this pathway has options to get into our domestic events, the TTA National Invitational, the National Championships, both senior and youth, TTA Tours, and the Hopes Challenge for those under 12 kids. There might be certain restrictions put in place on an event-by-event basis, but typically anyone in this pathway can get access to that if they're members of Table Tennis Australia. Where things change a little bit is that international piece, where you need to get to a certain level before you're going to be going out and representing Australia. The Hope Squad get access, well, the best of the Hope Squad get access to some ITTF international Hopes events, and then it's the WTT series, both youth and the seniors, before those ITTF Continental and the ITTF Worlds that we spoke about earlier. And the international and domestic all play a part in the ranking points on offer, both for national rankings, but also world ranking points, which come into play for some of the bigger global events. So that's the pathway, but what is it that we do to support the pathway? What are the projects and programs that we run to ensure our athletes are getting better? The first is GTE DTE, so that's global training environment and a daily training environment. Now I'll say that each of these sections is going to have a slide afterwards, which we'll be able to go into more detail. But effectively, we're putting in a training program that can move with the athlete. It's based in Melbourne, but we want to be global so that we can support the global nature of where the athletes live, train and play. TTA events, we want to have a greater emphasis on the TTA Tour and domestic events. Also at ITTF and WTT, we want to send a coach more events for more athletes to make sure that the athlete isn't isolated, but they get the opportunity to work with our coaches on a more regular basis to understand from them how to implement their training into match day conditions. We run a series of periodic camps, typically aligned to our benchmark events, our major events, to give athletes the opportunity to train up and become better. We run coach development. This is a new phase for us. We have just launched the TTA Coach Development Panel. It is in its infancy, but it's certainly a space which we would like to spend a little bit more time on working, because we can't have world-class athletes without world-class coaches, but it's certainly an area we're focusing on as time goes on. And again, the National Hopes Tour and the youth program, which we've got to support the talent identification of the next generation. From here, I'm going to speak a little bit around AIS categorization. So this is the Australian Institute of Sport. Nicole mentioned this right at the start. Athlete categorization, it's an HP system, so an all-of-country tool. So all sports in Australia have this, that are used to identify, monitor, and prioritize athletes with the greatest potential to support Australia winning and continually improving at current and future pinnacle events. What does this mean? How do we get more athletes across the Australian sporting network to get up to the highest of the highs and podium at World Championships and Olympic Games? Every sport, which has a national sporting organization, has the same categorization levels, but the access into that is going to be sport specific. So there's five groups here. You can see what categorization is, and you remember this categorization piece is the very pinnacle of our Olympic pyramid. But in that, there's 5 more spots. So you go through emerging, developing, podium potential, podium ready, and podium. And again, I'll take you through a definition of them shortly. But what's really important to emphasize here is the AIS is looking for not Australia's best athletes, but the world's best athletes. So how do we make sure that we're developing athletes who can compete with the best of the best on a world scale, not just in an Australian scale? And our framework is aligned to events, so how you perform at the Olympics, at ITTFs, at WTTs and world rankings, but also an athlete development framework and our what it takes to win model and individual performance plans for these athletes operating at the highest level. In practice, what does that mean for table tennis? We're trying to identify athletes genuinely on the pathway to this podium and support their journey. Now, you can see the categories are on the left. The middle is the definition from a table tennis perspective, from a performance output perspective. But also on the right, you can see the number of athletes that we have in each category from an Olympic program perspective. And you'll see that for podium and podium ready, those top two, we don't have them yet, which is why the funding which we have isn't necessarily as high as some of the other sports. To become a podium athlete, you need to be world number one, or you need to have achieved a podium, so gold, silver, or bronze at an Olympics or World Championships. Unfortunately, we haven't achieved this yet, but that's why our plan is to get more and more athletes ready for that in Olympics to come. Podium ready, the second category, is a quarterfinalist at those major events, or if you achieve a top 20 senior world ranking or top 15 doubles world ranking from an Australian pair perspective. But again, we don't have any there. Podium potential is where some of our athletes start to come into play. We've got 6 athletes at this level, and the way you get in is through various performance targets at WTT events, so it's Smash, Champions, and Star Contenders, or a top 50 world senior ranking or top 30 doubles world ranking, again in Australian pairs only. Developing and emerging, this is the space where we want to see more athletes progress to this, and there are performance definitions to achieve that. We have 2 in the developing space at the moment and 1 in the emerging space. So it's a difficult framework to crack into, but that's because we're trying to develop athletes who are the best in the world. So that is the overview of the TTA Olympic program. The next part of what I want to talk about is the specifics of the athlete program that we have. But if there's any burning questions, I'm happy to take anything now. All right, I'll keep going. If you've got questions, to make sure you keep them for the end. The TTA athlete program, which we have, at a broad overview, what we do, what our supportive initiatives are, the global and daily training environment, which we spoke about, we'll go into, the preparation and support we have for ITTF and WTT programs. We have the periodic camps, and we have a talent ID program. Beyond that, there are athlete-driven initiatives. So these are initiatives which we would expect athletes to be doing on their own, not necessarily through our support, certainly keeping us informed of what they're doing, but they're things which need to be driven from the athlete or the athlete's family. So this is the club daily training environment, which could be domestic, it could be international, but it's where you as an athlete base yourself and have your training in order to get better and better. You have performance at national events, so the national championships, the Invitational, the Tour, Hopes Tour. I should also say international events as well would certainly be in there. Your performance there is up to you. And then again, the state events and performance programs that you might be part of, they're things that you're driven by yourselves. But to go into the supportive initiatives from TTA, I just wanted to make it really clear the difference between a daily training environment and the global training environment. So the daily training environment is a daily base where structured high quality practice is always available to you. So the most obvious example is your club. The club where you go to practice and train, that's where your DTE is going to be. The DTE which we offer is in Melbourne, in West Sunshine at the club Loops. That's available to all squad members with specific details coming in the next slide. The global training environment, or the GTE, this is training and competition that follows the athlete and connects the athlete and the coaches. So this enables a program that moves with the athlete, because we recognize that Australia, if you want to become a world-class athlete in table tennis, you can't spend a lot of your time in Australia. You need to be out there in the world in better training environments with world-class competition. And we want to make sure that you are able to do that, but our coaching group can support and follow you through that. Our offering of GTE is for the top level athletes year round, and it's typically a variety of camps and international events for them. And I just want to bring in Ricardo into this as our national head coach, who lives and breathes the DTE and GTE, just to give a bit of an update on kind of how the current GTE is going and some of the insights he's been having and the work he's had with some of our top performing athletes over the last little bit. Ricardo.
Hey, thank you, boss. First of all, hi to everyone. I'm so happy to have so many people of the sport in one place and talking about our sport. So very glad to be here. The global training environment, I think it's another step in our program that mostly was to cover two things. One was the trying to program better the periods of practice for the top athletes, because they have a lot of competitions. For example, one of the top categorized athletes would have something around 35 to 45 events / matches throughout the year. And with that amount of competitions, you lose a little bit of track of practice and what you have to practice. And also is a good thing because most of our teams and most of our categorized athletes are still in a very young age, so they still have a lot to develop in their own game. So it came from that need, and also from the need of me spending more times, or the coaches spending more times with those athletes who are spread out the entire world. So what basically we try to do is set some periods of time throughout the year where we would, or most of us would all connect in one place, and doesn't necessarily has to be specifically in Australia, can be all over the world, and normally is attached to a zone where ultimately there will be an event, or prior to event or post event. And yeah, that also gives us a chance, and one of the particularities of this is having the possibility in many of those trainings connect also with the top players of the rest of the world, which is definitely a plus. Like even now we had champions in Chongqing, China, and Yang Zi and Nicholas Lam were able to practice with the top athletes for the course of almost 1 week, which is absolutely amazing, and reinforces the need and what it takes for us to develop also our game. So yeah, a little bit of that. But as I started, it's just another step in the ladder of what is the pathway of any athlete. So you have all the foundations before that, and this is ultimately one of the last pieces that we are always trying to connect and trying to elevate your level of game.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ricardo. Really interesting insight into how the GTA works in practice. I wanted to give you a little bit more of a rundown into the DTA, knowing that the global training environment is very much there for categorized athletes, and those are the top echelons. But for the daily training environment, there is opportunities for anyone who's been listed in one of these squads to engage. So again, the categorized athletes do have the full global training environment there. That's the program that moves with the athletes, has individual athlete plans. They might have support from some of the Australian State Institute of Sports. We will support them with international league consultations and supporting them with getting contracts overseas, and a budget and travel priority. And we have, as I mentioned, 9 athletes in that categorized phase. But for the national team and squads, there's a structured daily training environment. The access is in Melbourne, in West Sunshine. There's major event preparation camps, which we also run. So when we have ITTF Oceania, for example, we'll be having a camp to make sure that the teams are all on board at the in the same preparation level there, event support for those as well. And we want to work with you to understand how we can support your own daily training environment, be it with us or in your own structured club. From that pre-emerging squad perspective, That's targeted integration blocks. We don't necessarily expect people to be coming in full-time, but to come in for specific periods to work with our coaches, so we can have monitoring and development over the course of the year, and then support the development of you as an athlete to get into the next stage, into the national squad or that emerging categorization. And then the last one being the Hope squads. This is more camps-based monitoring. We've got 5 national Hopes tours and camps, which we plan to run each year. So having access to work with the coaches there, international Hopes exposure for the top Hopes kids. And there's no national DTE expectation, though if you are interested in coming into our DTE, we're certainly open to a conversation. And you can see on the right there the number of athletes that we've got. So 9 at the categorization level, around 30 in our national squads. The pre-emerging squad has the 4 and the Hope squad currently has 15. And bringing that into really practical sense, the national team and squad always welcome at our training center, but just keep in contact with the coaches and we'll make sure that we have an opportunity available for you. Pre-emerging squad and the Hope squad, specifically Monday and Thursday, we have training with the para program at MSAC from 10 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. So this is an opportunity. It's a really unique part of our sport where we can train with a world-class para program, adding value to both our athletes and the para athletes. And you get the opportunity to spar and play with Paralympic champions, which is incredible. We also have afternoon trainings on Monday and Wednesday at Loops and on Saturday morning as well at Loops. So there's set times and structures for you to be coming along to. Then we've also got interstate and international camps. So we know that Melbourne is, not everyone lives in Melbourne. There's going to be people from across the country joining this call, which is great. And what we're going to do is have options available for you to come in, not just for, a Monday or Thursday session, but to come in for an individual training camp or a plan which we can tailor towards you. So we expect you to be around for 3 weeks to make it properly worth your while. It'd be high expectation and hard practice, but there are opportunities for you, for those not based in Melbourne, to come in for those specific times, knowing that you can't be joining us on a daily basis. The main reason why we have centralized our DTE offering is due to costs, and the fact that we wanted to make sure there was always one place available, per the definition earlier, that an athlete can go to, knowing that they will always have access to high quality training with the national coaches there, always available. So the budget that we have unfortunately won't allow for DTEs to be offered in other parts of the country, but that's why we want to make it easier for you to be engaging with us. And to that, I've created a few personas which might be relevant for you as athletes, or there's parents who can see how their athlete could fit into it. And you can see how you can kind of pick and choose and work with us to access the DTA. The first athlete, this isn't a senior squad member, but they're interested in what I'm calling a constant state of camp. They want a full-time DTA. So rather than a 3-week camp, they want to be camped here for 12 months of the year. They're doing 6 days a week training, 2 daily sessions, and we would support them with a competition schedule, which is both international and domestic. That might be what you're interested in. Athlete B wants strategic camps. You don't live in Melbourne, but you want the DTE access. So this is when you've got interstate or international based athletes. You can arrange to be here with us for the DTE for 3 weeks. We can support finding billeting to support accommodation costs, because it is challenging and expensive to go around, but we reach out to us and we'll support where we can. And during those camps, you'll have the full suite of DTE provided. Another athlete might just be wanting to play in youth events. So you want to play and train overseas. So you want to participate in the TTA youth tours and TTA with a TTA coach, and have overseas training consultations, understand where are the best hubs to go to, what are the best times to go there, and how can we support you getting there as well. An athlete D might have a self-managed DTA. You're comfortable in your own space, your own environment. You know the people, you're more in control of the costs, and that's fine. We self-managed program at your own club. You're welcome to engage with us in any way whatsoever. You don't need to be either A, B, C, or D. You can be a mix or a combination. But the key member is the key message for squad members is, if you want to engage with us, reach out and we can have conversations around how you can best fit into our DTA. So that talks about the DTE and the GTE, the global training environment. I wanted to talk about the ITTF and WTT events as part of the athlete program which we offer. So firstly, for ITTF events, this is the World Cups, World Championships, World Youth Championships, as well as the Oceania Continental Cups and Championships. For here, we have support which can range from training camps. We could have multiple coaches at these events. Australian team uniform is provided for the national team, event hospitality, which is accommodation, food, and transportation provided, athlete financial support for logistics, and online entry management. So these are the pinnacle events for us, the ones which we need to be ensuring we have good performance outcomes to be able to talk to the Australian Institute of Sport and the Sports Commission and say, we're progressing over time. Have you seen the results we're having at these events? That's why we put more of our resources into it, though there is an asterisk. Level of support is always subject to availability of budget, and is based on, that will always be allocated based on a squad prioritization level. So that we have the higher the level of event, the more a squad or team member should be expecting to receive there. But they are the important pinnacle events for us. Beyond that, we have access to WTT, and there's a line there, but the top one, the Champions, the Smash, and the Youth Tours. This is where we want to ensure there's a coach at the events. We're supporting with logistics as best we can, even if it is just navigating the international network at the moment with our travel agent. Flights are going up in price and also challenging routes. If you need to be going to Europe, for example, at the moment, the typical route through the Middle East isn't available. So we can be supporting with those logistics and also the online entry management. But then also for the WTT suites, beyond that suite of events, we'll be supporting with online entry management. There is an administration burden which we have to bear for that, but it's something which we want to be doing to make sure that the athletes at the right level get access to the international events. And with that, the access to the WTT events, if you want to be going to WTT, there are a lot of opportunities, but we would expect you to be getting to the right level of our performance areas. So the national team would have access, the national squads, the pre-emerging squads and hope squads we all spoke about. Also, if you're nationally ranked within the top 5 under 11s, the 21s or the open category, or if you're endorsed through our TTA migration policy. So the idea here is that we're ensuring that the level of quality of Australian athlete which goes out to into the international landscape, because we don't want to make sure that Australia is represented well, and we recognise that WTT and international competition are a great way to benchmark your progress, but it's not the only way. And so there are certainly opportunities for you to develop yourselves as athletes before taking on these steps, and we'd expect you to be hitting certain levels of performance before you get to that to represent Australia there. One piece that we wanted to talk about, though, was the WTT Youth Tour, and I will hand over to Simon Gerarda in a second to take us through what this looks like in a little more detail. He's just come back from a Europe tour where he took the kids on screen to 3 WTTs there. But this is an opportunity for international exposure at a young age. So you get to go overseas for a tour with the coaches, supporting with event selection, which events to go to, the logistics, and just navigating the international table tennis scene. When you get to a certain age in table tennis in Australia, you're probably going to have to be spending significant periods of the year overseas. So these sorts of activities to do when you're young is really good to do it with experienced professionals who have done it before and can support you so you can learn the ways of navigating that international table tennis system. The whole team stays in the hospitality packages to build up that team environment and team culture. And there's a shared cost to support the development of the coach going there as well. So I'll hand over to Simon just to take us through a little bit what his most recent experience has been in the WTT events in Europe, and maybe a little bit about what's coming up as well.
All right, thanks, Rob. I'm having a bit of a chuckle to myself because everyone gets a bit of an insight into your brilliance in dealing a bit with me and how I can go off and set new challenges and new things along the way. So, yeah, first off, I wanted to say Nicole this evening talked a bit about the funding partners and the system there, and I guess that's where I just wanted to also talk about what we're building here and how the parents and clubs around the country are also coming on board in sharing that cost, as Rob just talked about, and that's been massive progress in Australian table tennis. So it leads into that Europe tour that we just talked about. Before I get into that, though, Rob talked about world-class team tonight, and that's something I can't or I want to express really strongly. That and it goes in the daily environment, whether it's training or whether it's on these tours, that it all starts with setting world-class benchmarks. Melissa's worked a lot on that. in terms of the benchmarking of athletes, but then obviously with Ricardo and myself, with my experience, that everything has to be world class. So when we're on these the recent European tour, it's not there on holiday. It's work. It's making sure that we're reaching world class benchmarks, and that was evident in the results. Countries like Czech Republic, Poland, Spain, at a junior level. We're doing them in at the moment. The Germans, we're beating them at that under 15, under 17 category. And I think that's one of the most pleasing things, that there's evidence behind what we're saying here of world-class team. The next thing I just wanted to say, the check and challenge process behind all of this, as you've heard from Rob, you can hear that and see that everything, the whole pathway is aligned. And the check and challenge process with Nicole and through Rob and through our team, Ricardo and Melissa, that creates those world-class standards. And then going on these tours with the kids or in the daily training environment, rolling it out to those standards has been key. And then the last thing was the scope of our work. As you can see, it's the whole cohort. It's the whole pyramid that we need to implement a program for. And that starts, as Rob said, in that categorization framework to make sure we keep the funding partners knowing that we're putting that money where we're told to put it, but then building it downwards and making sure that the whole pathway through the Hopes camps and then through these European tours for the under 15s and under 19s. So with that said, medals at WTT events, it seems to be a constant, whether it's mixed doubles with Austria, whether it's singles events in Asia or singles events in Europe. Building great relationships with coaches, parents and athletes, that just seems to be widening with every single project we take on. The upcoming one to Thailand and with China training camp, that's just building out more relationships, more people trusting the program, more people trusting the coaching, and obviously working together. Building the team environment through Oceania Championships, camps, the tours, and now extending it to the exchange program with China. I think the key things that I'm seeing on these events is making sure that we're there to identify the gaps in our players, in our kids. This recent event, we played three tournaments, 6 different events. So it gives me, as an experienced professional, time to explain to kids one-on-one where their gaps are, so that when we can come home and work. Which, Rob, I think the next slide's about daily training environment, so I might just finish off with that and then you can talk a bit more about it. Or so the WTT events, the camps, the programs all feed in basically to everyone's individual daily training environments, whether it's here or whether it's abroad or interstate. These events just provide the perfect feedback. It implements standards, which I talked about earlier, and starting to create those world-class levels. So as I said, Rob, you can pick up the pieces after that rant that I've just gone on, as you always do.
Brilliant, Simon. Thank you.
Perfect.
I've got the benefit of having slides which I presented, not prepared to go off the cuff. So you've done well there. Thanks for that. And Simon's he's running a DTE at the moment actually for some of our program there. So thank you, Simon. So the next part we wanted to talk about was the periodic camps, which we have available there, which we run as part of the athlete program. So these are domestic international camps aligned to our benchmark events. They're squad specific, event specific, but it's for competition ready preparation, high quality practice, tactical clarity and working with the coaches, But also a huge piece of work for us this year is around team cohesion and culture. And we know that one of the competitive advantages that we can have as Team Australia against lots of other countries is understanding that our diversity makes us stronger, and spending a bit of time focusing on who we are as teams and as individuals, and how that then unites to make us a stronger program and a stronger team no matter what event we go to. So culture is a really big part of what we're trying to achieve. Bringing that to life, here's just a selection of the camps which we're running this year. They've already started through running a camp in January in Melbourne, where we had a lot of our top athletes back for the TTA Invitational and the Oceania Cup, but spread out throughout the year in different locations, but always aligned to those benchmark events. So again, we can make sure that we make the most of having our athletes together, because at times it can feel like we don't get to see athletes as much as we'd like to. So we have to absolutely make the most of that time we have, and it's a real privilege to work with a lot of these people, because the athlete profile is very young across the board. And so it is great to be able to support and shape them as people as well as athletes. So that's a really important and special part for us, and a big part of the program that we have. The last part of the program which we're going to talk about is the talent identification piece, so the National Hopes Tour. This has been refreshed and revised from what you may have known around Hopes in years gone by. And the purpose of this is to provide more opportunities for our young athletes to engage in high performance environments, to work with the coaches on a more regular basis, align them to our events, and really uplift the entire system working with athletes and coaches. We want to provide opportunities for these athletes, these young athletes, to understand what it means to be high performing, to learn from Olympians and other specialists, to get access to performance-based prizes, to work with the coaches and play the best in Australia, as well as then using that as a pathway to launch into international opportunities through Oceania and other countries that also run these Hopes programs. Hopes is aligned with the International Table Tennis Federation, ITTF, Talent ID. So it is a global program, but we run it in our own special and revamped way, which is exciting for us. And here I'm going to hand over to Melissa Tapper, who has been instrumental in the development of this new tour, just to kind of take you through a little bit more around the Hopes Tour and what a camp would look like on a practical sense, just so you get a really good understanding of what it is you'd be signing up for. Millie.
Thanks, Rob. It's a huge privilege for me to have the Hopes basically as my main project. I guess those that haven't been involved with it, though, it is based around having the high performance environment. And as Simon, Ricardo and Rob have already spoken to, it's about developing world-class players for down the track. So a lot of the camps are based around having standards and the behaviours that we'll expect of if they progress through and then travel into national teams, they're able to travel and perform alongside the national coaches. The camps will have a minimum of one national coach, and at times they'll have all three, which is really exciting. And a large piece to the puzzle as well is we really encourage club coaches to come along so that we can learn from them, they learn from us. It's a whole lot of knowledge sharing, and we can kind of touch a lot more of the pockets around Australia so that the country's aligned within how training's delivered, technique, performance. So we're kind of getting a greater span across the country, given that we can't always be in touch with every athlete every day. Another piece to the puzzle as well, though, is also having parents in and around and just observing at times, but also being a part of some of the educational sessions, which we do have. At a camp, there are 2 sessions a day, and with over the 4 days, there's up to 24 hours of on-table training that's held. At the end, obviously, we have the challenge day where Hopes points become available for the under 12 kids to try and progress into Oceania Hopes. But the week is also about education as well. So each day will always have a knowledge or an educational piece where we have special guests come in. We've had Olympians, medalists, we have physios and a lot of different sports practitioners basically opening up the world for these athletes to see what is possible and start introducing them to a high performance environment that they can start to become comfortable in. So yeah, for me, we've got Traralgon in a couple of weeks' time, and I'm really excited for how that one's shaping up.
Brilliant. Thanks, Millie. No, I can't wait for the Traralgon event. It's going to be awesome. Finally, just wanted to take you through some of the selection policies and how that all fits together. So we've gone through the overall program, then the overall system, then the specific athlete programs that we have. And now to talk around how you get into this. Are those the top tier top tier squads that we've got? So the policies that we've just revised them, and they follow best practice from the Australian Institute of Sport. And it's aligned with the entire Australian high performance sporting system. They are up online if you're interested in having a read, but we've got the squad selection policy, the team selection policy, and the appeals policy, all reviewed by our legal counsel and the board. Now, there's been some interesting conversations that I've been part of around what is an objective and what is a subjective selection. I just wanted to kind of give you a slide for you to have an understanding of what it means at either end of this spectrum and where table tennis fits in. So over on the left, you see an objective policy. So this is something which is purely done by measuring something. It's selection done by a measurement. So typically it could be where an event is won in either meters or seconds or grams or something. Think sprinting or swimming or weightlifting. If you can swim 50 meters in breaststroke to the other end faster than someone else, you're going to get picked in the team because you've shown that. At the other end of it is subjectivity, which is more open skill, team-based, where individual brilliance doesn't necessarily guarantee success. And then here selectors have more power, where they will think about who, in their opinion, is got the best chance of receiving a medal as opposed to someone who can run the fastest. Here you might think of a team sport like football, soccer, for example. You can't have a team made up of the 11 best goalkeepers in the world. You need to have strikers, midfielders, defenders, and goalkeepers. So there is a mix there. So where does table tennis fit into all of this? We fit pretty firmly in the middle there. That more open-skilled individual sports, boxing, judo. So they've given examples here. This is from the Sports Commission, where opponents and conditions are important variables. So it's difficult to identify purely who is the best based on any one performance. It's a number of factors which you can take into account. But having said that, we do want to provide some level of objectivity as well as some level of subjectivity when we're doing these selections. So our selection philosophy, to talk about how we make the decisions on the national selection panel. I should say at the start, the national selection panel, it's made up of four individuals, myself as the chair of the panel, who get together and have conversations around which athletes should be representing Australia at the benchmark events. Our philosophy is that we want to select athletes and or combinations of athletes capable of those medal-winning results now and in the future for World Championships, Com Games, and Olympic Games. Now, we want to respect direct qualification when and when it happens. So if there is qualification into an event is based either purely on world ranking or on a qualification event or a trial, we want to respect that from an objectivity point of view. And we always want to make sure that there's at least one selection which is purely objective, so that athletes know exactly what needs to happen for them to be able to get in, but then also giving the authority to the selection panel to make decisions on who they think is best to hit that philosophy. Now, what does that look like in practice? To be really practical here, these are the major events that we've got for 2026. The 3 in green are selections that have already happened, and the 4 in the different shades of blue at the bottom are what will be happening for the rest of the year. And I won't go through them all, but take a quick look. But I'll ping out a couple just to demonstrate what this means. The first one, the Oceania Cup. So our selection philosophy was that we said that the athletes who are invited by ITTF Oceania to come to this event, as defined by the top 2 world rankings at the time of the invitation, would get straight in. The team size was 2 per gender, and we put in 2, the top 2 world ranking at the time of selection. So that was purely objective. When you look at the Oceania Championships and the Youth Championships coming up in August and September, here we have a combination of objective and subjective. Each team would be expected to have 4 in there per gender. So that's senior, open, under 15 and 19s. So there'd be 4 per gender. And for each of these teams, objectively, the number 1 ranked athlete per the Australian national rankings will be picked into the team, with the next 3 picked by the selection panel. And we expect that to be based off the May 2026 rankings. Now, that's an expectation that is subject to change. It all depends on the timing of the event entry and the expected the cutoff date for that. But what this slide is designed to do is to give you and to give athletes an idea of how it is that we're going to be making our selections. It's not an easy thing to be doing. There's a lot of quality athletes out there in the network, which is really exciting. And the harder it is for a selection decision to make, means the stronger the overall playing group is. But this at least provides some level of understanding of how we're going to be making our decisions and what you might need to do to get into there. So that's something which you can share with our athletes or others who are interested in getting part of that national team. This is very specifically for team selections. The last one which I wanted to bring up was the Youth Olympic Games for 2026. Now this is a benchmark event, major event for 2026. If you have an athlete or you are an athlete who's in the right age category, you probably have received an email about this already, but we'll go through some of the details here just to make sure everyone's on the same page. Really importantly at the start, we haven't been guaranteed an athlete quota just yet. That means we haven't guaranteed our spot at the games. We're in conversations with the ITF and the Australian Olympic Committee to get that quota, and we expect to find out by the end of April. So we're not there yet, but we're working as hard as we can to make sure we get athletes there. So if we get that, this becomes more relevant. The games will be in Senegal, in Dakar, between the 31st of October and the 13th of November 2026. If we get an athlete quota, our maximum would be 1 male and 1 female. And the minimum eligibility criteria which we would have there was they need to be an Australian citizen, they need to be a member of TTA at the highest level, born on or after the 1st of January 2009, because the games are an under 17 event. And really importantly, have participated in at least one international federation sanctioned event between the 25th of October and 2025 and the 25th of June 2026. That was a rule which was put in place by the ITTF, designed to ensure that at the start of the games, every athlete who's going to be there would have a world ranking position attached to them based on points scored over the previous 12 months. So that is in place. If you hit all those criteria except for that last one, there are opportunities. There are WTT events. Bangkok in May is probably the best and easiest to get to. Get in contact with me as soon as you can to express interest if you want to be involved in this process. Our nomination process will be a Youth Olympic Games qualification trial where we'll have up to 8 athletes per gender compete in a single round robin where the winner takes all, essentially. We haven't got a venue or time yet because we haven't received this quota, but as soon as we do, we hope to be able to announce it. But if this all goes ahead, the way that you would get into the qualification trial is up to those 8 athletes. The top 4 semi-finalists from the under-17s at the TTA Tour, Sydney, New South Wales, will automatically qualify. So that event is happening in May, I believe, very soon. So the top 4, the semi-finalists, if you're eligible per the other requirements above, you'll get automatic entry into the trial. The remaining positions will be filled from the under-19 national ranking list with an expected cutoff of June 2026. That's how you get into the qualification trial. The winner of that would go through as long as we are successful with that quota from the Australian Olympic Committee and ITTF, which we're very hopeful for. That's coming pretty much to the end of the presentation. We'll have time for questions at the end as well. But just some of the key messages which I really wanted to share with you. Our program, it's progressing and trending upwards. You may have seen some of the results we've had over the last little bit. It's really pleasing to see that some of the hard work and dedication of the athletes in particular is really paying off across all levels of the sport, from the youth events, which Simon was talking to the highest events of WTT champions. Our results at the ITTF Mixed Team World Cup in December, there's some really pleasing progress. It's happening both on the table and off the table. It's an evolution, and we're still a relatively new team, but we're excited by the progress and where we're heading. Our focus is building a world-class team at that top end of the pathway. That's where the prioritization needs to come to. And entry into it is performance-driven. So international results, domestic results, ranking, and getting in, being visible to the coaches so they can see who you are and what you have to offer. Our resources are limited, and prioritization is a daily conversation that we have. But the plan is that the more success we have at that pinnacle benchmark event, the more the resources become, and then eventually the more we have to play around with a little bit. But it is an ongoing conversation around prioritization of resources, time and funds and effort and everything there. But we are committed to an inclusive, open culture. I've mentioned culture earlier. That is huge for us in the Olympic program. What we want to be doing is making sure everyone feels open and included, and your voice and questions matter, which is why we're going to have a little bit of time for Q&A if there is any. But one new message which came to me based on this conversation now and just looking around seeing who's on the call. For me, one of the key program outputs that we want to have is making Australians proud of table tennis and the athletes that we have here. And even on this call, I know I'm not going to call out who because I don't want to miss anyone, but we've got quite a few past Olympians who are here. And we certainly are standing on your shoulders to have got to where we are. Nothing could have been here without your achievements. And who is it that supports the Olympians? It's the parents, it's the coaches, it's the entire program that supports them. And what we're here to do is to hopefully achieve those results, which you guys have all started, and to keep improving and impressing so that we can make you proud and make Australians proud through the sport which we have, the sport that we love. So conversations like this are really important so that you can understand where we're coming from, what our plans and goals are, but just know that we're here to serve. We're here to serve you as members of the high performance community, and we're here to serve the athletes to make sure they have every possible chance for success now and into the future. With that, I'll pause, stop sharing, and hand over to you guys if there's any.
Did Rob just freeze for everybody or just for me?
For everyone.
For everyone. Okay. All right. Well, whilst Rob's in cyberspace somewhere, I'll jump in.
Yeah, I think everybody freeze for a moment there.
Okay. Rob, can you hear us?
Not yet.
No. Okay. Well, while we're waiting to see if Rob can get back in, I am keen to make sure that we make the most of time, and that if you have questions, you ask them now. So feel free to put something in the chat if you prefer to do it that way, or just stick your hand up. I'll see if I can see them on the screen, and we'll go around and get some questions. There's a lot of information in there, so I hope we haven't stunned you into complete silence, but I do encourage you now to ask questions if you've got them. If I can't see your hand, just feel free to jump in and ask.
Hi, I just want to ask Rob a question.
Is that Lisa? Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Nicole. I just want to ask Rob if Serena can play WTT Bangkok.
Okay. Is Rob back on the call yet?
That's a yes, Lisa. Yeah. Yes, I can answer that one. Yes, she can play Bangkok. We're getting to that. Okay, Rob had jury duty today and couldn't respond to everyone's emails today, and obviously was preparing for this meeting. But that's a yes, Lisa.
Okay, thanks, Simon.
Perfect. Any other questions?
No.
I know it was a good presentation, guys, but there is absolutely no way we've answered everybody's questions. So don't be shy. Put them out there.
I'm not sure, Nicole. I reckon Rob's that good.
He is pretty good. I'd hate for anybody who's sitting there thinking, oh, should I ask a question? I'm not too sure. And you decide not to, and then later on you think, oh, why didn't I just ask? So this is just an opportunity for any question to be asked.
Sorry, I might just jump in then. And full disclaimer, I don't have a player currently in the system. Also not my children, also not part of the system. But I'd love to understand a little bit more around how currently the high performance program is working with the other departments at TTA. So I used to work at TTA and other sporting organizations. I'm just keen to learn more about how participation fits in. We spoke a little bit about the power program, but so how those intersections currently look like.
Yeah, great question, Patrick. Thanks for asking that one. So I did a bit of a restructure of the organisation last year to try and make sure that we were structured in a way to deliver on our strategy. So at TTA now we have 3 different teams. One is the Olympic program, then we have the Paralympic program, and then we have what's called a customer focused team. And in that customer team, you've got all the participation products and all the participation team. You've got the marketing person and also the national events person. So basically that team is anybody that is interacting with I guess our customers and people that consume the sport. So they're the 3 pillars of the organisation. Rob leads the Olympic, Sue Stevenson leads the Paralympic, and Wade Edwards leads the customer team. Those 3 people report into me, and we work very closely together. One of the things I've been really focused on within TTA is growing the culture within our team and our staff and making sure that we don't just work in silos. So whilst the marketing person sits within the customer team, they also work really closely with Rob and with Sue in the Power program to make sure that we're telling the stories of our athletes and trying to grow the visibility of our sport overall. So I think the short message is last year I had 9 direct reports. Now I've got it down to 3 plus the integrity manager. And we're working much more closely together to make sure that we're servicing the whole of sport. We recently rebranded our entry-level program, which, as you probably know, was Spinnaroos. It's now called Ping Pong Play. Use the term ping pong because we think that's the fun sort of side of things. Table tennis can be the serious or sport side of it. And then the play part is around getting anybody of any age to really participate and give table tennis a go. And we've expanded that program from primary schools also into the secondary school space, which we didn't have before. So I guess happy if you jump onto our website and you go into About Us, you'll see the org structure on there. So please feel free to have a look there. And happy to take any other questions you might have. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of an overview.
Thank you.
No worries. We've still got a little bit of time, guys. So if there are any other questions, now's the time to ask.
I've managed to jump back on as well, so apologies. I don't know how long I was talking to myself for, but I'm back now if there are any questions.
All good, Rob. Yep, no, we've just Lisa asked one question which Simon was able to answer. Then Patrick just asked me a question around the organisation as a whole and how the team's set up. But I haven't seen any other questions come through. So I might just take a couple of minutes just to sort of say, I hope you can hear and see the passion that these staff have spoken about today. I'm super proud of this team. It's only been in place for just over 12 months. And any sort of change always comes with some sort of disruption. But this team is highly passionate and they are very dedicated to what they do. They spend, in Rob's case, a lot of hours behind the computer trying to get this right. And in the case of the coaches, a lot of time traveling and a lot of time away from their families, internationally and domestically. When you hear them speak, all staff today have spoken from the heart, and hopefully you can hear how much this program means to them. And I want you to know that that's reflected in every single athlete that they work with, and the way that we want to work with all of you in the system, whether you're a coach, a parent, an administrator, or a volunteer. We do have funding challenges and we do have to work within the parameters of how we're allowed to spend those funds. That at times really makes it challenging. It ties our hands in terms of what we'd like to be doing compared to what we have to be doing. So we have to work within those challenges, but we're always on the lookout for continuous improvement. We're always trying to improve these things. So to my team, thank you for the incredible amount of hours that you put in, the hard work that you put in, but I also know the passion and the meaning that sits behind that for each of you as well. So I just hope that that's come through for you guys today, and you can maybe feel a little bit of how this team's working together and what we're trying to achieve. If you think of a question outside of today's session, please don't be backwards in coming forwards. Drop Rob a note. I'm sure I'd love to hear from you. As I said, we're always looking to try and improve things. If you've got ideas for something that we haven't brought up today, or a way that we can either improve communication or improve the way that we're working with our system as a whole and the clubs, as I said, there's only so much we can do with the funding we've got, and it's directed towards the top of the pyramid. But it's really important we keep building that base of the pyramid and keep holding the hand of our athletes as they come through to make their transition as smooth as possible. So that's it from me, Rob. I'll throw it back to you to close it out, but I just wanted to say thank you to my team members, Rob, Ricardo, Simon, Melissa, for your time tonight, but also for your passion and everything that you do. And I'm absolutely thrilled with the number of people that have come on for this session tonight. So thank you to all of you who've taken the time out of your night to listen to what we have to say. Back over to you, Rob.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Nicole. I think yeah, you wrapped it up perfectly there. As you said, I'm very happy for any sort of communication. Get in touch if you've got other questions or want to find out more about the program. We're here to serve, and you're the people we're doing it for. So thanks very much for your time. Thanks to my team for all your efforts, and looking forward to catching up at the next event. Thank you all very much again.